Discomfort is the ceiling on our results. No matter how hard we work, no matter what we do, even how much we want it, if we're avoiding discomfort or surviving discomfort, that's going to act as a ceiling, which is really a limiter to anything that you want to achieve.
What's up, my friend, and welcome back to the Legendary Life Podcast. I'm your host, Ted Rice, coach to entrepreneurs, executives, and other high-performing professionals. Today, we're going to be talking about how to create a breakthrough in your life no matter what. And to help us get into this conversation, I have my friend Sterling Hawkins back on the show because he just wrote a book about how to create breakthroughs. In fact, he not only gives keynote speeches all around the world on this topic, but he does workshops to help business leaders and businesses themselves to create breakthrough results. And man, you're going to love this conversation because every time Sterling and I get together, we got together doing something seriously uncomfortable. We both met in Costa Rica on our first ayahuasca experience. And so we're both really into this idea of how to create breakthrough results in your life no matter what. But Sterling has literally written the book on it. It's called Hunting Discomfort, How to Get Breakthrough Results in Life and Business No Matter What. So without further ado, let's get to the conversation with my friend, Sterling Hawkins. Sterling Hawkins, thanks so much for coming back on the show. Looking forward to connecting again and to diving into how we all need to get more uncomfortable.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me on, Ted. I've missed you. Good to be back.
Miss you too. Yeah. And I just want to jump right into it because we're seeking discomfort, but it's already been a very uncomfortable couple of years with masks and vaccines and arguments about vaccines and a bunch of other things that I don't even want to open up the can of worms. Why did you write this book about seeking discomfort in a time where I think everybody's super uncomfortable?
Well, it's even a step further than that. It's not just seeking, it's hunting. Looking for the things that light you up, trigger you, make you uncomfortable, and then deliberately going after those things. It's actually a divining rod to find the results that we most want. And I'll tell you, the biggest question I get from people out there is exactly what you just said. The kind of generic version is, Sterling, I've got this going on with my business, this in my relationships, this in my bank account. I don't need to hunt discomfort. I've got plenty of it. And my answer is always the same. Oh, you mean you're living with discomfort? Hunting it is when you're ultimately free of it. And that's the point of this whole book. It's not to live an uncomfortable life. It's to free yourself of discomfort. And when you hunt it, you never have to deal with it again.
Now explain how that happens.
There's two components to breaking through discomfort. The one is really based on exposure therapy. And, I'm sure you're familiar with it. I'm sure many of your listeners, right? In psychology, psychotherapy, if somebody's got a phobia, they'll slowly expose you to that phobia until you no longer have it. So if you are afraid of dogs, for example, you might start out talking about dogs, then maybe look at a picture of dogs, then see a dog outside, and then be in the same room as a dog, and then maybe get up next to that dog. And it's slowly going to decrease your fear, decrease your discomfort when you start to realize that, well, there's not really anything to be afraid of. So that exposure therapy is the first part of hunting discomfort. The second piece is equally as important, but it's to get to the root of where that discomfort started. Just to stick with the dog analogy, since we're already rolling with it. I work with businesses, not dogs, by the way, but it works as like a parallel here. There was a reason a dog phobia started. Maybe it was something when you were 5 years old or 10 years old, or at some point that discomfort took hold and grew within you. And as you can get to the root of that discomfort and distinguish what actually happened, it starts to free you from it. So those two things together, combined, leave you ultimately free from any discomfort that you're facing, whether it's fear of sales or asking people for money or having particular conversations in a relationship or public speaking or anything else. You do those two things together, you'll break through it in no time.
Yeah. And I would even, I mean, I'm kind of trying to pretend not to know about this stuff, right?
You got to play devil's advocate here.
Yeah, exactly. And also, we met doing something really uncomfortable. As anybody who's listened to our past interviews, we went to Costa Rica, drank ayahuasca a few times, and what you're talking about, it's been a big part of. People ask me like, "Hey, Ted, you've been through a lot in your life, man. What's the like? How did you do that?" And there are two fundamental things. Number one is got to take care of your health, right? But the other part of that is to go hunt the things that make you afraid and to conquer them. And then that makes you free. And I've got a bunch of stories about that, but I want to hear from you again. Why is this so near and dear to your heart?
Yeah, well, discomfort is the ceiling on our results. No matter how hard we work, no matter what we do, even how much we want it, if we're avoiding discomfort or surviving discomfort, that's going to act as a ceiling, which is really a limiter to anything that you want to achieve. And to answer your question, I figured this out the hard way. I was certainly not a discomfort seeker in my early days. I founded a company with my dad, sold it to a group in Silicon Valley. Long story short, became the Apple Pay before Apple Pay. And it initially was hugely successful. We raised $500 million US, multi-billion-dollar valuation, which in the early 2000s, I think there were two companies at that level. Now there's a fair number of them. It's fairly common for companies to reach that billion-dollar valuation. But early 2000s, it was rare. So we were really flying high. And it was almost like I was playing out a scene from The Wolf of Wall Street. Like it's just parties, fun, success, money, nice hotels, first class flights, like the whole deal. And well, just like the movie, it doesn't end well. We grew too quickly. Frankly, we raised too much money too fast. And when the housing market collapsed, our investment dried up and $500 million was gone.
Wow.
Yeah, it was almost too much to bear. I mean, reflecting on it now, I see that my whole identity was caught up in that company. Who I was, what my relationships were, what success looked like. And so when it went bankrupt, I was really plunged into the abyss of the unknown and all the fear, anger, and grief that went with it. It was discomfort at the highest levels. And early in that breakdown, I retreated from it. I withdrew from friends. I was scared to look at different jobs. And so eventually I ran out of cash. I go from this big, beautiful penthouse in downtown San Francisco, just looking out of the Bay Bridge, like it was a gorgeous place, my favorite apartment I've ever had in my entire life, to the guest bedroom in my parents' house, which is, it's not a good look in your 30s. It's just not. And it was almost like I was playing out a bad country song. Like even my girlfriend broke up with me. It's like one thing after another. And, that first night, I'll never forget it. I'm laying in bed. I'm staring at the ceiling. I'm in 6 figures of personal debt. And frankly, I don't know if I can go on. I don't know if I want to go on. It was a real dark night of the soul kind of moment. And that first night, I made this declaration to myself. I say, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do something. I'm going to take steps forward with 3 words that have become hugely important to me, no matter what. And that was the beginning of building myself back. In all this research that I've done hereafter, because I didn't want to be in that place again. So I'm like, how can I avoid it? What can I learn? Like, how do I not get into that dark place again? I've found that discomfort, not only was it really good for me, but it's where all the results in life are. So how's that?
Powerful. And I think it brings up the same question I get, right? It's like, well, how did you get to that point? What were the things? Because I don't feel that way. I've been in a bad situation. I didn't feel like, oh, well, I'm going to conquer this hashtag no matter what, like for someone who's maybe struggling with that, and maybe they are, maybe they just sold their business. And, I've got a client who just sold his business and he's going through some challenges. I've got listeners who reach out to me, like for someone in that situation where they don't feel like, well, I just naturally rise to the occasion and look at the silver lining in this terrible situation. how do you help those people?
Well, the first is that there's got to be some desire or intention, or at least acknowledgement that they actually do want to grow and move forward. And that is not the case for everybody. And unless somebody's really committed to doing the work, which will be hard, will be uncomfortable, there's no silver bullet, there's no magic wand. Like, if they're not ready to go through it, I don't think there's anything that you can do for them. Now, on the flip side of that, if somebody's really committed and ready, well, then the work begins. And I think the first step is something that I did myself. It's take a hard look at how you see reality in the most general of terms. And I mean reality in three components. Like, how do you see yourself? What's your identity? Who do you think you are? What are you good at? What are you not good at? And maybe more importantly, which one of those things that you hold true about yourself maybe isn't true? And that's a really hard, maybe even painful process to go through. The second piece is, how do you see other people? And the third is, how do you see the world? When you don't have the results that you want, I mean it in the most generic way, right? Results could be money, could be a relationship, could be love, joy, happiness, however you want to define results. It's very personal. And they're all in the same place, though, which is you've got to open yourself to the discomfort to be able to ultimately achieve them.
Yeah, I hear you. And I'm curious, right? I feel like, at least in the US, we're in this situation where, I don't want to open up too big of a can of worms, but I do believe like we're trying to be more considerate to people who are really struggling, and maybe who have a history, or even a generational history of being disadvantaged. And we're trying to be cool with that. But at the same time, no matter what we've gone through, there is just kind of picking up your burden, picking up the cross and bearing it, and moving forward, right? Like, how is this being received? Talking about like just achieving things no matter what.
Well, I think you need to risk offending somebody in order to see reality more clearly, to take more effective actions. It's not that you see it correctly, it's not they see it correctly, but unless you're willing to risk something, nobody's going to be able to see it better. I think there's this great analogy about beliefs, and they work kind of like lenses and glasses. And just like glasses, you put them on, you take them off, you see better, you see worse. Beliefs work the same way. Different beliefs will work better or work worse. The second part of the analogy, I think, is critical, which is most people aren't taking off their glasses and assessing their own prescription, right? You just take it for granted. Maybe you clean off the lenses, you put them on, and you see what you see. But if we're not assessing the prescription, or better said, the beliefs through which we're viewing something, then we're stuck. And when we challenge some of those beliefs, that's where the results will start to come in.
Yeah, I remember going through something like that in health and fitness. Way before I started this podcast, I had kind of fringier beliefs and didn't believe in the things that I believe in now, and that I use with my clients to great success. And it was a really tough moment where I got fat, and I was like, there's no way I could be wrong here. I've been doing this too long. I've spent too many thousands of dollars on too many seminars. And there must be something wrong with my metabolism, even though I was like only 38 at the time, right? Or my hormones. I had my hormones tested. And eventually I realized it was what I was doing. It was my beliefs that was the issue. And I had to relearn a bunch of things, or unlearn some things, and empty that cup and learn new things. And man, I don't know if I would ever gotten there. It was super uncomfortable. I don't know if I would have ever gotten there had I not been at that point of like, am I going to just be like the way I am? Because not only was I fat, I had low sex drive, I wasn't sleeping well. So I was just like, I felt a shadow of the person that I felt that I was. Do we always have to hit that, like you in your parents' guest room from the penthouse moment, or?
I think it's a great place to start, but you don't require a rock bottom moment. Like, you don't have to wait till your whole life and world falls apart around you to start doing some of these things. In fact, Had I known some of these things, I would have started way sooner. I think everybody has this vision, especially after a failure or a breakdown, of being like the phoenix that rises from the ashes, like, oh, I'm going to return and rise again. I'm going to be successful. But the piece that's easy to forget is the burning. Like you're rising out of something that's burned. And unless you're burning maybe the values, the ethics, the beliefs, the perspectives, the identities that you've had, then you can't rise. It's a necessary component. I found this, you're going to appreciate this because this is a new research I found in working on the book. It's really like cornerstone to this whole thing. It's out of the University of Michigan, and they were studying my favorite topic, which is discomfort. And they were doing these brain scans on people as they were going through different kinds of discomfort. Physical discomfort, like they broke an arm; emotional discomfort, they lost a job or broke up with a loved one, something like that. And they're scanning their brains going through this discomfort. And what they found was mind-blowing to me. No matter what kind of discomfort the people were facing, physical, mental, emotional, their bodies and brains handled it almost identically. So much so, and maybe you know this part, you can take acetaminophen to make your emotional pain better. It's crazy. Now, I don't recommend that. That's not like a life hack. Nobody should be doing that. But the the important part of that,
biohack.
Right? Like that's not a biohack that's sanctioned. I'm not a doctor. Definitely don't do that. But the powerful part of that is if we experience discomfort the same way everywhere, we can grow our capacity to deal with it anywhere. It turns out that it's a muscle you can build. Everybody knows, you especially, if you want to build your biceps, you go to the gym. Well, if you want to build your resiliency, your capacity to create breakthrough results for yourself personally or professionally, you hunt discomfort. There's just no two ways about it.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? In your book, you talk about using discomfort as the compass, right? As I feel discomfort. That's the direction I should go to. Where the natural reaction to experiencing heightened anxiety or however that discomfort manifests itself is, you want to go get away from that fast. Can you talk a little bit about why it's the compass and why those feelings that come up may not be telling us the truth?
So it's absolutely critical. Of all things, I came across some work that this guy by the name of G.A. Hansen was doing in the 1800s. And this will make sense in a minute, I promise. But he was studying leprosy. And everybody thought that leprosy is this terrible disease. You get it and your body parts fall off and your skin rots. Like, it's really awful. But what he found is that that's not what leprosy, the bacteria, does. What it was doing to people is it was numbing their ability to feel physical pain. So if they burned themselves or got a scratch somewhere, they wouldn't feel it. They wouldn't know that that area needed any attention. Then it would get infected and, all these terrible conditions then ensue. So discomfort is critical. It orients us to the world. And if we're not paying attention to it, we're just not properly oriented to the world around us. Now, where people get in trouble is the fact that discomfort isn't correlated to actual danger. We've miscalibrated our compass. If I am to stand up in front of the conference room, I might be scared, but there's no real danger there. At least if you're really nervous to stand in front of the room, like there's no reason the world should be spinning and your heart rate should be popping out of your chest and your hands getting clammy, right? There's no real danger there. And so as we hunt discomfort, we go into discomfort, we start to better calibrate when we feel discomfort with actual danger. I work with a lot of people and companies around how to reach their potential. And there's always greater potential inside of us. And if we're denying discomfort of any sort, physical, mental, emotional, and however that feels in the body, if we're denying those things, we're ultimately denying a piece of ourselves. And it will literally be impossible to achieve your potential. It's critical. We just need to turn towards those things instead of just avoid them or survive them altogether.
Yeah, you talk about discomfort versus danger. And it's really important. It's not like, well, hey, go walk on a tightrope in between two cliffs with no harness on because you got to seek discomfort. This is like distinguishing between what could be physically damaging to us versus like the example you gave where you're stepping on, you're not even going to get a tomato thrown at you these days on stage, right?
Exactly.
Not even booed, most likely. Nothing happens. It's all in your head.
Yeah. And by the way, so some of the resolution of that story early on when I'm, kind of living this broken life at my parents' house is the thing that scared me most was, I kid you not, speaking in public, like terrified me to no end. And my mom said this thing, she said, the way out is through, which is actually a Robert Frost quote. To me, will always be my mom. Like, I just picture her saying that to me. And it was like, okay, if I want to transform this situation, I've got to go through that discomfort. And long story short, I ended up speaking at a conference in Singapore, was terrified. It's a good thing I practiced because I think I blacked out during it. And I get off the stage and I think I totally bombed. I'm kind of hiding my eyes. I'm like, just get me back home. I need to get through this. And the conference director comes up to me and he goes, Sterling, that's the best talk I've seen in my 17 years of doing this.
Wow.
I was blown away. And by the way, to this day, I don't think he was in the same talk that I gave. I think he just wanted to say something nice to me. But he did put me in touch with all of his conference director friends. And, all of a sudden I had this career on my hands. And the thing that scared me most in life, I love that Seinfeld quote, like most people would rather be in the coffin than giving a eulogy. That was me to a T. But going into that fear, confronting that fear, opened up a new opportunity for my life and career that, frankly, I don't know if I would have found without. And it feels like something that I was meant to do. Like, I can't see myself doing anything else now.
I also think it's important, something came up while you were telling these stories. I had a conversation with an entrepreneur and he was into motorcycle riding and some other stuff, but he had this thing with scuba diving. And we were in Mexico, which is a great place to go diving. And it's like, well, you have to go diving. You're this guy, you challenge yourself, you have to do it. Why haven't you done it? Right? And so we ended up doing that. And I feel, and I even have a personal thing where I was in Brazilian jiu-jitsu doing competitions. A lot of people would say, oh my gosh, I would never do that. So scary. For me, it was okay. But public speaking, like for you, that was my thing. And now I've gone on to do keynote speeches. And I think it comes also back to this like identity, right? Where, I'm not the type of person who gets up on stage. And it's like, well, maybe you don't have to make that into your profession, but if you ever hope to achieve your potential, you need to hunt that out. And what would you say to someone, though, like if they had some fear of public speaking, but didn't necessarily see how it would be the right move for them to, in the context of or the dots aren't so easy to connect for them on how that would help them?
Yeah, well, that's the big thing with like changing your perspective on yourself or the world is you can't really see what's on the other side of that until you go in it. In fact, it's impossible to truly predict tomorrow with 100% certainty, right? Tomorrow's not guaranteed to any of us at any level. And so I'd say a couple of things. The first is the point, again, is not discomfort. It's not to find these dangerous or even highly uncomfortable situations that happen to be safe, but they may be avenues to free yourself from that discomfort. If the way out is through, the way through is to surrender, to open yourself to those things so you're no longer triggered by them. Now, if you're afraid of public speaking, the path for you doing some of those things, freeing yourself from that worry, may not lead to a keynote speaking career. In fact, probably not. But it will lead you somewhere dramatically new. I have no doubt about that. But you do have to step into it to see where it can go.
Yeah. And what's the most uncomfortable you've ever been?
Well, I'll tell you, this book coming out is pretty uncomfortable for me.
Is that the answer, though?
It really is. And, I've done some crazy things over the years from, joining you in Costa Rica for some plant medicine down there, and diving with sharks, trekking the Sahara, skydiving. Like I've done a lot of things. But this book just very transparently has been uncomfortable for me in a couple of different ways. The first is committing to do it. People have told me for years, "Oh, Sterling, you got to write a book. You've got this great perspective." And I'm like, yeah. Okay, I'm going to be 40 in a couple of years. You're right. I do need to commit to do it. So the commitment of the time, the effort, the resources that I knew it was going to take was the first step. And I think there's an analogy there for whatever people are dealing with, right? Like you've got to come to terms with, yeah, it's going to take this money, this time, whatever it is to produce that result. And you guys sit down and say, I'm committed to that. I happen to commit with, signing on the dotted line with a publisher. The second thing that's been really eye-opening for me, especially about a month ago, the book doesn't come out until June 21st, although my publisher would have me say it's available for pre-order now, right? About a month ago, I had this thought like, well, what happens if people don't like it? Or what if they don't read it? Or what if it doesn't have the impact that I want it to have? And I did spend quite a bit of time coming to terms with that. And it was a little bit of soul searching and some journaling and some breathing practices and yoga, like really looking at where that discomfort actually stemmed from. I even shed a couple of tears in the process and came to terms with the fact that I put everything I possibly could into that book. Like I put my heart and soul into it. And that's not to say I wouldn't do it a little bit differently now, but I did everything that I could. And if people don't like it, if they don't buy it, I'm actually okay with it at that point. But it took not avoiding it, not trying to just get through the book launch, but coming to terms with what I was uncomfortable with and why. And now it feels great. I can't wait for this thing to be out there.
Yeah. And I've just started reading it. You gave me the kind of the advanced copy, and I've been slowly making my way through it. I think it's very well organized and it's actionable. And I think you hit, at least in the chapters that I've read so far, you really hit hard on you've got to start to reevaluate the way you see reality. And I think that's very appropriate timing in this world where we don't know what's true just in my world of health and fitness, I get into arguments with people about like whether carbs make you fat or not, and I start to see like myself and how I was tied into those beliefs and how it helped me take action on those things and how the community that I was a part of. But then I also realized like when I left all that, I became a happier, more success. I just became better in every single way. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, that's just what it takes. I mean, it's the cost of entry, and it's very much not an intellectual journey. Somebody can read this book and know it better than I do and have no results. You have to take the things that are on the page and go do them. You have to get into that discomfort. That's one of the reasons we built a whole bunch of exercises into it, to take it from the idea to embodying it in your life, in your business, how you're approaching everything. A lot of the people, the executives I work with, entrepreneurs especially, they all want freedom. And they think that freedom comes from a certain amount of money. And I can tell you from doing work with people that have made 8-9 figures plus personally, freedom is not in your bank account. Freedom, true freedom, is when you free yourself of discomfort. You're no longer confined by these things that you've been avoiding and surviving your entire life. And when you find the courage, you dig deep in yourself, you find the courage to get into those things and open yourselves to them. Like the results are just like they're dramatic, they're unbelievable. They sometimes to outsiders sound like magic, but that's how much power that's in that unknown if you're willing to step into it.
Do you have a favorite story about a client that you worked with or someone that followed your teachings and had a breakthrough?
Yeah, well, it's funny. So this week we're highlighting a whole bunch of different people and leaders from their businesses that have used these tools to create breakthrough results. And one of my favorite stories is this guy. His name's Emmanuel. And beginning of the pandemic, he parted ways from his job. He had a wife, he had a family he was taking care of. He lived in New York. And when he lost a job, he was stuck. He didn't know what to do. And one of the practices in hunting discomfort is commitment. Like commit so deeply, there's no going back. And he's thinking about this as he's walking through some New York neighborhood, and He happens to walk by a tattoo parlor and he gets the name of the business he wants to start, has wanted to start for years, on his, I think it's his left bicep. It's big too. It's not like a little thing. It's like his entire bicep. Now, I don't know how he explained that to his wife when he got home. But from that commitment, once he committed to it, he started taking actions. He moved his family down to Texas. He formalized the inception of his company. He started to work with people. First, he was donating his services, and then he was starting to get paid. And he just texted me the other day, this guy's got an 8-figure business on his hands. Now, it took him a lot of hard work. He spent many sleepless nights, I know, because I was talking to him, where he was worried about how much money he was making, where business was going. But he committed and had these incredible breakthrough results. Can I give you a little more brain science? Or is that too much?
Of course. No, we love that here. We'd be like Sterling Huberman on the show.
Right. I should say again, I'm not a doctor, but I'm just obsessed with these things. There's this thing in our brain called the reticular activation system, RAS for short, let's call it. And it's like the bouncer of your subconscious. It decides of all the things your subconscious is thinking, feeling, understanding, taking in from the world around you, which of those things are important to surface to your conscious mind. But a great example of how it works is I moved to Denver somewhat recently. I had to switch from a sedan to an SUV so I could get around this in the snow this past winter. And I see the car that I bought everywhere. Now, it wasn't like I bought that car and magically all these other cars appeared. It was that my RAS was tuned to look for cars just like mine. And of course, they were there. It's also the reason, by the way, why you can pick your name out if you're at a busy like conference or a concert or something, right? Like you're tuned to listen for certain things. Now, when you commit, not when you have commitment forced on you, but when you actively commit, it retunes your RAS to look for openings for action, for things to do to achieve your goal. And they will oftentimes be things that you can't see until you commit. It takes stepping into that commitment and really cutting off some of your plan Bs and the safety nets. It's getting a tattoo, right? Committing in a way where there's no going back. And you'll start to see things, pathways, again, openings for action that will lead you to whatever it is that you want to achieve. But the commitment's got to come first, just like a manual.
Yeah, that's a powerful story. I've never gotten a tattoo, but I could see how like you better follow through with that, or you're going to have some explaining to do every time you wear a short sleeves shirt.
Exactly. It's not the physical tattoo that's most important, although a surprising number of people, no matter what community, have gotten tattoos of their business or things that they're committed to. So it's cool to see, but it's not necessary. What's required to make a commitment is to have something on the line. And you could do it with something like I could commit to you and say, Ted, I will do X, Y, and Z by a certain point of time. That's a commitment. We wanted to step it up a notch. We could sign a legal agreement. You want to take a step further, you could put your identity at risk. Another personal example is before I wrote the book, even before I contracted with the publisher, I started telling people I had a book coming. I told my manager, I told the speaker bureaus, I told my agents, I told clients, I said, I have a book coming. And so my identity or my credibility was on the line. So it called me into action. So it doesn't really matter how you commit, whether it's a physical tattoo or you commit with words or putting something at risk, but it does take committing in some way.
Sterling, you talk about like building the discomfort muscle. And this is a health and fitness podcast, right? And so someone might not see the connection between like, hey, this discomfort thing. And let's say someone's already handled their discomfort in going to the gym, although that could be for some people, for some of the people that I worked with. But let's say most of the people who listen to the show, they're past that discomfort, like, oh, people are looking at me. It's the thing that I love about what you're talking about and why it's so important to talk about on a health and fitness show is because stress, we all do what we do in life because we want to feel like we're experiencing life to the fullest. And we get into these traps where it's a number on the scale or it's a number on the bank account or it's the number of, people we've hooked up with or whatever it is. And it's like, at the end, it's like you're never going to be that healthy just from exercise, diet, and even sleep alone. If you want to get to that next level, you've got to get out there and you've got to live this life of hunting discomfort. Because if you don't do it, there's something that's going to be holding you back from being the best person in your business, being the best person in your relationship. And so that's why I'm super pumped.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you another like fitness story specifically from the No Matter What community. It happens to be my sister. Her name's Haviland. She's really the reason the whole No Matter What community and movement started. Because, I got into this just to like figure out my own life. And she was right out of college at the time. And she was the first person to take some of these things and actually apply them to herself, outside of me, of course. And one of the things that she dealt with and had for years was her health and fitness. She had gained a lot of weight. She was diagnosed with some allergies. She was dealing with a tremendous amount of stress in her life, right out of college, figuring out what to do. We had some family things going on at the time. And it wasn't that she didn't want to be healthy or didn't try to eat healthy. It wasn't even that she didn't go to the gym. She was just tremendously stuck. And she said, okay, well, first is I need to come to terms with my discomfort, with the stresses in my life, with going to the gym, with eating the things. Like, I'm going to sit down, and same as I did, do a little soul searching on why you're not doing the things that you want to be doing, or why the things you're doing are uncomfortable in the first place. And she did that for a while. She didn't even tell me she did this, by the way. It only came across my radar when she goes, Sterling, I'm going to sign up to be a bodybuilder and be on one of those stages in a bathing suit and all the muscles. And I look at her, I'm like, what? Like, she didn't tell me she was doing this soul searching and, uncovering her discomfort. And she's like, yeah, I'm committed to having a body like this. And she shows me a picture of some like ripped woman on Instagram. And so she committed, and she didn't just say she wanted to do it. She actually hired a coach. She built a street gang, what I would call people surrounding her that were committed to her success. She got a coach, a fitness coach, a diet coach, a posing coach, and she signed up for a competition. I think it was like 9 months from when she was. And she put in the work. Even in those mornings she didn't want to, like, I saw her do it. She's weighing out her food. She's having the protein shakes. She's taking the supplements. And she met many challenges along the way. Like, her allergies have stopped her in different ways, but she's learned how to overcome them and work with them. And she is today a professional championship bodybuilder. I still have to deal with the fact that we work together. When people see us on the road together, they're like, your sister can beat you up. And I'm like, I know. But what the transformation she's been through, sure, manifests in the physical, but it was really handling that discomfort inside of her that gave her access, gave something greater within her a chance to rise. And that's who she is today.
Such a great story. And now I know why you have visible abs all the time, is because Haviland
I'm hanging out with her.
Keeps you to that. Yeah, you're like, man, I can't. I need to diet down here. And one other thing that this conversation brings up is a client of mine who just became a client. He started crushing it in our program. But when he was on the call with me, he's like, our world doesn't really force us to do anything that uncomfortable. I mean, it feels uncomfortable to go to work, feels uncomfortable to do those things that you don't really feel like doing. But once you come home, you can just sit on the couch and you can watch your Netflix, which I love. I do that. But for a lot of people, that's all they do. And even very successful people running their business all day.
Yeah.
And it just feels like you start to become less and less of that person who went forward to create the big changes. I mean, all of us have had things that we've had to overcome, and we become, especially people who've been in the game for, they're out of their 20s, they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s. It's like you become less and less unless you continually focus on growth. And I think there's no better way. At least, this is where it's kind of hard to interview you, because we see so eye to eye. I haven't swam with the great white sharks yet, but I've swam with bull sharks in Mexico.
which is more dangerous.
Yeah, they were like pregnant females, is what I learned. So they're like totally docile as long as you feed them. They're not coming after you, although they will run into you.
Well, discomfort versus danger, right? You don't want to do anything overly stupid.
Yeah, but then again, it took me a couple times to get comfortable. I dove with them a couple times, and you better believe the first time I'm like, I'm hearing the Jaws theme while I'm going down and seeing these sharks, because there was like, I don't know what you call a school of sharks, I guess, swimming around you, right?
Right. You're constantly like checking your back to see if there's a shark behind you. Yeah. Right on. Well, I think as you're pointing at, the world today is very much set up for comfort. I mean, I can literally work from home, be entertained from Netflix, and have food delivered to my door. Like, I don't have to do anything uncomfortable anywhere. And, I've got a pretty good life. And that's the case for not everybody, but, a lot of the world these days. And that's called living with discomfort, not hunting it. And unless you're willing to go after these things.
I like that distinction.
Yeah, right. Like you're going to, by the way, rationalize why you have all the results that you have. Oh, my boss is like this, or my personality is that, or, now's not a good time. I'm too old. There's not enough money. It's a pandemic, right? There's always going to be reason and rationality to back up why the results that you have are valid, which they are. But unless you're willing to hunt that discomfort and break through it, you're just going to be resigning yourself to a life of incremental improvements at best. And, to your point, that's no way to live. You keep shrinking from the discomfort. You keep kind of finding more comfort and certainty in your life. You're just going to shrink as a person. And it's not a good way to live a fulfilling life.
I feel like this is going to be something that the psychologists of the future do with people. Obviously, exposure therapy actually comes from the psychology literature, but we don't hear a lot like, hey, so you're depressed, go take this medication. Instead of solving the root problem, which maybe some people need that medication. I'm not a doctor either, but it would be interesting to see, like, hey, what are the things that you're not doing right now that we know promote peace of mind or promote a positive outlook? And go do those things first. Oh, you have this anxiety. Well, let's expose you to something slowly so that let's see if this brings down your anxiety. I think also it takes a little bit more time for for example, getting used to speaking on stage is going to take a bit more time than, say, the taking a pill, and certainly a lot more effort, or even just taking a Toastmasters class.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it looks like. And there's this doctor out of New York. Her name's Dr. Edna Foa, and she works with women specifically that have dealt with like some pretty terrible traumas in their life. They've been beaten up or raped, like the worst of the worst. And they come to this Dr. Edna Foa. And many of them, and I think this is the relatable part of it, are in some way dodging or avoiding or medicating that terrible experience that they went through. And, some of them might be committed to being healthy, but at the same time, they feel better when they eat a whole pizza. True. But there was something about that experience that they had in a very intense way, and we all had probably in lesser ways, that's in the way of us achieving the result that we really want. And what Dr. Edna Foa does is newer on the scene of psychology and therapy, is she actually brings these women back into those experiences to put themselves at the center of what happened and relive the emotions that they went through, some pretty dramatic and painful emotions. And when they do that, after only a couple of sessions, these women are ultimately free of it. They're not taking medication to feel better. They're not taking things to get rid of the trauma. They've acknowledged the trauma. They moved through it with an expert, by the way, which I think is important, and they're forever free of it. It goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning. You get to the root of that discomfort and you start to unearth it and dismantle it, you're forever free of it. And you can achieve, whatever you want, because discomfort's not standing in the way.
Yeah. I feel like this whole conversation has been like pointing at, like, I need to go with you to Peru in, is it August?
I think you do. I'm biased, but yeah, it's in the end of August.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, Sterling, just an incredible conversation today. I feel like this is I feel like this is the psychology of the future. I really do believe that. The psychology of personal development, the future of treating maybe not like full-blown psychosis, but for people who are like, I don't know why I feel bad. I have trouble with my relationships. I struggle with my health. I'm not able to do what I want. This is like the first line of treatment, if you will. I really do believe that. And it's been an honor to have you on the show today. And if you're listening right now, you can get Hunting Discomfort at Amazon. You got to get this book. It's amazing. Of course, I'm all about this, but I would even tell you, if you feel uncomfortable talking about this or with the idea, maybe this is exactly what you need to hear today. What would you say in closing for someone listening right now?
Well, first, thanks for having me on, Ted. It's always a blast to spend some time with you and good to see you again. I think it's always hard to see what's on the other side of the tunnel, right? You can't see it from where you sit today. And if there was like one thing that I would suggest everybody does, is it's commit to one thing that you're going to do every day, no matter what. It doesn't have to be the same thing. It could be big or small. Today, it might be, I'm going to call my mom no matter what. Or I'm going to send that email no matter what. Or I'm going to spend an hour at the gym no matter what. Whatever it is. And you can change it day to day. But commit to doing one thing every day, no matter what. And what it does is it builds a confidence, a resilience inside of you so that your subconscious actually believes that as this uncertain world around us changes, you're the kind of person that's still going to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. So I'll leave people with that.
I love it. And Sterling, where would you like people to go? I know you have a group.
Well, so we do have a no matter what community, we call it. And it's people from all around the world that are committed to really big goals, personal goals, professional goals, and not just the goal themselves, but committed to move through this discomfort necessary to achieve them. The best place to learn about that, the book, all this stuff is my website, which is sterlinghawkins.com. You can learn about the community there, hear about Emmanuel, hear about my sister, hear about all these people that have created incredible results and join us. You can find my social media there. You can sign up for our emails, and I'd welcome anybody that wants to go on the hunt for discomfort with us.
Very cool. Well, Sterling, always a pleasure, my friend. And we need to go hunt some discomfort with each other in person sometime soon. So really looking forward to that.
No doubt. Thanks, Ted.
Thank you again for listening to the Legendary Life Podcast. We have some amazing episodes coming your way, so make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're already subscribed and today's episode hit home for you, please share this episode with someone who you know would benefit from listening. Take care and see you every Monday and Friday in your favorite podcast app.